The bar was a blur of neon and laughter, but all I could hear was her voice slicing through the noise. "You're a fool, Caleb," Jenna slurred, her martini glass tilting dangerously. "You're in love with him, and you're too scared to admit it." I froze, my beer halfway to my lips. The words hit like a punch, raw and unfiltered, exposing a truth I'd buried under late-night video games and awkward roommates' small talk. Jenna, my best friend since our Chicago high school days, had a knack for seeing through my carefully built walls. But saying it out loud, in a crowded Brooklyn dive bar, with my roommate Julian just a few feet away, laughing with his new coworkers, that was reckless. "Caleb, you're staring again," Jenna teased, her hazel eyes glinting with mischief. She leaned closer, her curly hair brushing my shoulder. "Just kiss him already. What's the worst that could happen?" I choked on my beer, heat crawling up my neck. Julian was across the bar, his lean frame draped in a fitted black shirt, his dark hair catching the light as he tossed his head back, laughing. At 25, he was everything I wasn't: confident, charismatic, effortlessly gorgeous. A Puerto Rican graphic designer who'd moved into my Williamsburg apartment 6 months ago, turning my quiet life into a whirlwind of late-night talks and shared takeout. He was my roommate, my friend, and Jenna was right, my impossible crush. "Shut up, Jen," I muttered, shoving a hand through my tight curls. At 26, I was a lanky black guy with a knack for overthinking and a job as a middle school history teacher that left me too tired to deal with my own heart. He's straight, and even if he wasn't, he's way out of my league. Jenna snorted, loud enough to draw a few glances. "Straight? Please, have you seen the way he looks at you? Like you're the only person in the room." My heart stuttered. Julian did have this habit of lingering, his warm brown eyes catching mine during movie nights, or when we'd argue over who made better coffee. But that was just Julian being Julian, friendly, open, maybe a little flirty in that effortless way he had with everyone. "Caleb, you're hopeless," Jenna said, downing the rest of her drink. "If you don't make a move, someone else will. That new coworker of his, Lila? She's been glued to his side all night." I glanced over, and sure enough, Lila, a petite woman with a sleek bob and a bold laugh, was leaning into Julian, her hand brushing his arm. My stomach twisted. I told myself it was just the beer, but the truth was sharper. I was jealous. The night spiraled from there. Julian joined us, his smile bright as he slid into the booth next to me, his knee brushing mine under the table. Jenna, relentless, kept dropping hints, her eyes darting between us like she was directing a rom-com. By the time we stumbled back to our apartment, the air between Julian and me was charged, heavy with unspoken words. "Caleb," Julian said as we kicked off our shoes in the dimly lit living room, his voice low, almost hesitant. "You okay? You've been quiet." I opened my mouth to lie, to say it was just a long week, but Jenna's words echoed in my head. "You're a fool, Caleb." My pulse raced, reckless courage surging through me. I turned to him, his face inches from mine, and before I could overthink it, I leaned in and kissed him. For a split second, the world stopped. His lips were soft, warm, and then, against all logic, he kissed me back. His hand found my neck, pulling me closer, and the room spun with the taste of him, the heat of his breath. When we pulled apart, his eyes were wide, searching mine, and I realized we weren't alone. Jenna stood in the doorway, her jaw dropped, her phone frozen mid-text. "Holy shit," she whispered, breaking the silence. "I didn't think you'd actually do it." Julian laughed, a nervous, beautiful sound, and I felt my face burn. "Yeah," he said, his voice shaky but warm. "Neither did I." The next morning, sunlight streamed through our apartment's floor-to-ceiling windows, painting the hardwood gold. I woke up on the couch, my head pounding from too many beers and the memory of Julian's lips on mine. He was already in the kitchen, humming softly as he brewed coffee, his bare feet padding across the tiles. The normalcy of it was jarring, like last night was a dream I'd imagined. "Morning," he said, glancing over with a shy smile that made my chest ache. "You want coffee?" I nodded, unable to meet his eyes. "Julian, about last night." "Don't." He cut me off, his voice gentle but firm. He handed me a mug, his fingers brushing mine. "Don't say it was a mistake, because it wasn't." My breath caught. You mean that?" He leaned against the counter, his expression soft but serious. "Caleb, I've been wanting to do that for weeks. I just didn't know if you felt the same." I stared at him, my brain struggling to process. Julian, the guy who could have anyone, had been waiting for me? The guy who tripped over his own feet and spent his evenings grading papers? It felt impossible, but the way he looked at me, open, unguarded, made it real. We talked for hours that morning, the coffee growing cold as we unraveled months of quiet glances and unspoken feelings. Julian told me about growing up in San Juan, hiding his bisexuality from his conservative family, moving to New York to find himself. I shared my own story, losing my mom young, navigating my identity as a gay black man in a world that didn't always make space for me. It was raw, messy, and perfect. But the world outside our apartment wasn't as kind. By noon, Jenna had spilled the news to our friend group, and my phone buzzed with texts ranging from supportive to outright shocked. "You and Julian?" One read, "Since when are you into guys?" Another demanded, as if my life needed their approval. Julian's phone was no better. Lila, his coworker, had seen Jenna's post on social media and sent a curt message. "Didn't know you were into guys. Guess I misread things." Julian sighed, tossing his phone onto the couch. "People always think they know you," he muttered. The weight of those reactions settled over us, a reminder that our moment of courage had consequences. Brooklyn might be progressive, but not everyone in our lives was ready to cheer us on. Still, as Julian reached for my hand, his fingers lacing through mine, I felt a spark of defiance. We weren't just roommates anymore. We were something more, something worth fighting for. The next week was a blur of stolen glances and tentative touches, like we were learning a new language together. Julian would brush past me in the kitchen, his hand lingering on my waist, and I'd catch myself smiling like an idiot. But outside our apartment, the world felt like a minefield. Our friend group was split. Some, like Jenna, were thrilled, throwing around wedding jokes that made us both blush. Others, like my coworker Marcus, grew distant, his texts short and clipped. "Didn't see that coming," he'd said at school, his tone heavy with judgment. Julian faced his own battles. His coworker Lila kept her distance, but her passive-aggressive comments at work, "Guess you're too busy now," stung. Worse, his older brother, Mateo, called from San Juan, his voice tight with disapproval. "You're throwing your life away for some guy," he'd said, and Julian hung up, his face pale. I held him that night, his head against my chest, and promised we'd figure it out together. But figuring it out wasn't easy. One night, we went to a local queer bar in Bushwick, hoping for a safe space. The music pulsed, and Julian's hand in mine felt like an anchor. Then a guy from my old college crew, Derek, spotted us. "Caleb, man, you're with him?" he said, his eyes flicking to our joined hands. The judgment in his voice cut deep, reminding me of the whispers I'd heard growing up in Chicago, the ones that told me I'd never fit in. Julian squeezed my hand, pulling me onto the dance floor. "Forget them," he whispered, his breath warm against my ear. We danced, bodies close, and for a moment, the world faded away. But the weight of those stares lingered, a reminder that love, even in a city like New York, came with a cost. At school, I started noticing the way my students looked at me. One kid, Jamal, a sharp 13-year-old with a knack for history, asked, "Mr. Carter, you got a girlfriend yet?" I laughed it off, but the question gnawed at me. Could I be open with them? Would it change how they saw me? I wanted to be a role model, but the fear of backlash from parents, from the administration, kept me quiet. Julian, meanwhile, was struggling at his design firm. His boss, a progressive type named Claire, was supportive, but the office gossip was relentless. One coworker, Tom, made a snide remark about Julian's new lifestyle, and it took everything in him not to snap. When he told me about it over dinner, his hands shook as he chopped vegetables. "I'm not ashamed, Caleb," he said, "but I hate feeling like I have to prove myself." I reached across the counter, stilling his hands. "You don't have to prove anything. Not to them. Not to me." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. That night, we lay in bed, the city humming outside, and I wondered how long we could keep this bubble intact. The world had a way of breaking things, and I wasn't sure we were strong enough to withstand it. The tension built like a storm. Julian's family was coming to visit. His mom, Anna, and his brother Mateo, flying in from San Juan for a long weekend. He hadn't told them about us. Not outright, but Mateo's earlier call made it clear he suspected. "They're traditional," Julian said, pacing our living room. "Mom prays the rosary every night. Mateo thinks being bi is a phase." I sat on the couch, my lesson plans forgotten. "Do you want me to stay somewhere else while they're here?" He stopped, his eyes fierce. "No, this is our home, Caleb. I'm not hiding you." His words warmed me, but the fear lingered. When Anna and Mateo arrived, the apartment felt too small, their presence filling every corner. Anna was warm but reserved, her smiles polite but guarded. Mateo barely looked at me, his jaw tight as he dropped his bag by the door. Over dinner, the conversation stayed safe: Julian's job, my teaching, the weather. But I caught Anna's eyes lingering on the way Julian's hand brushed mine, her lips pressing into a thin line. The next day, things unraveled. We took them to Prospect Park, hoping the open space would ease the tension. Julian and I walked side by side, careful not to touch, but Mateo's stare was relentless. "So, what's the deal with you two?" he finally asked, his voice sharp enough to cut through the park's chatter. Julian froze, then squared his shoulders. "We're together, Mateo. I love him." The words hung in the air, bold and unyielding. Anna gasped softly, her hand clutching her purse. Mateo's face darkened. "You're throwing away everything we were taught," he said. "This isn't you." "It's exactly me," Julian shot back, his voice trembling with anger. "And if you can't handle it, that's on you." I stood there, my heart pounding, wanting to protect Julian but unsure how. Anna stepped between them, her voice calm but firm. "Enough. We'll talk about this later." But her eyes, when they met mine, were unreadable. That night, Julian barely spoke. He sat on the fire escape, staring at the city lights, and I joined him, our shoulders brushing. "I thought I was ready for this," he said quietly. "But it hurts, Caleb. It hurts to lose them." "You haven't lost them," I said, hoping I sounded convincing. "They just need time." He leaned into me, his head on my shoulder, and we sat there, the city alive around us. But the weight of his family's disapproval clung to us, a shadow we couldn't shake. The fallout came fast. Mateo left early, booking a flight back to San Juan without a goodbye. Anna stayed, but her silence was worse than any argument. She attended Julian's art show at a local gallery, her face a mask of politeness as she mingled with his coworkers. I stayed by Julian's side, praising his vibrant designs, but I could feel her eyes on us, weighing every glance, every touch. After she left, Julian threw himself into work, staying late at the firm, his sketches growing darker, more chaotic. I tried to reach him, but he was pulling away, his smiles forced. One night, I found him on the couch, staring at a photo of his family, his eyes red. "What if they never come around?" he whispered. "Then we make our own family," I said, sitting beside him. "We've got Jenna, your friends at work, my kids at school. We've got each other." He nodded, but the doubt lingered. I started to wonder if I was enough, if love could carry us through the rejection, the whispers, the weight of a world that didn't always understand. At school, things weren't much better. A parent complained after Jamal mentioned my boyfriend in class, a story he'd overheard from another teacher. The principal called me in, her face sympathetic but firm. "Caleb, you're a great teacher," she said, "but we need to keep personal lives out of the classroom." I nodded, my throat tight, but the words burned. I wasn't ashamed of who I was, but the fear of losing my job, my students, was real. That night, I told Julian, expecting him to be angry, but he just held me, his arms steady. "We'll get through this," he said. "Together." His words gave me strength, but the cracks were showing. We argued more, small things like dishes or late nights, but they felt bigger, fueled by the pressure around us. One night, after a fight about nothing, Julian grabbed his jacket and left, the door slamming behind him. I sat alone, the apartment too quiet, wondering if I'd pushed him too far. Julian didn't come home until dawn. I found him on the fire escape, his eyes tired but clear. "I walked all night," he said. "I needed to think." "About us?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "About everything." He turned to me, his face raw with emotion. "I love you, Caleb, but I'm scared. Scared of losing my family, my job, myself. But mostly, I'm scared of losing you." I pulled him into my arms, the city waking up around us. "You're not losing me," I said. "We're stronger than this." The next week, we fought back. I spoke to my principal calmly but firmly about the importance of being authentic with my students. To my surprise, she listened, promising to address the parents' concerns. Julian reached out to his mom, sending her a letter with one of his sketches, a portrait of us, laughing under the cherry blossoms. Anna didn't respond right away, but a week later, she called, her voice shaky but warm. "I don't understand everything," she said, "but I want to try." Our friends rallied, too. Jenna organized a dinner at our place, inviting the ones who'd stood by us. The apartment was filled with laughter, music, and the clink of glasses, a reminder that we weren't alone. Even Lila showed up, her smile genuine as she apologized to Julian. "I was wrong," she said. "You two are good together." The night ended with Julian and me on the fire escape again, the city lights stretching out before us. "We're going to be okay," he said, his hand in mine. "Yeah," I said, my heart full. "We are." It wasn't perfect. There were still battles to fight, still people who'd never understand. But as I looked at Julian, his face lit by the glow of the city, I knew we'd face them together. Love wasn't easy, but it was worth it. Every risk, every tear, every moment of courage. And in that moment, with his hand in mine, I knew we'd already won.